Winter of 1974. Frozen plains of southern Norway. When the first snowflakes cut through the dry October air, the residents of Vardal already knew what to do. Lock doors, reinforce windows, and pretend not to see anyone still on the street. It had been like this for generations. Surviving there was less about strength and more about being accepted. But on that gray morning, while tractors hauled firewood and families took refuge behind heavy curtains, a teenager walked in the opposite direction. Mikkel Anderson, 14 years old. I wasn't looking for warmth, nor help. He was searching for something that others had rejected for years. On the side wall of the city hall, a sign was being torn off by the wind. Abandoned property, lot available, minimum bid, 50 crowns. The entire community knew that house. They said it was crooked, haunted, cursed, who had already swallowed a man during a bad winter. Mikkel looked at the cold coins in the palm of his hand, and he understood what he needed to do. 2 years earlier, Mikkel's parents had died in an accident on the road connecting Vardal to Raufoss. Since then, he had lived with his aunt and uncle, in a damp basement, with unspoken rules. Don't bother me. Don't show up. Don't stay too long. He spoke little. He listened to everything. That night, the uncle simply leaned against the door and said, "It's time to learn how to fend for yourself. No drama. No yelling." The aunt continued scrubbing the dishes as if it wasn't her problem. 10 minutes later, Mikkel left. Lightweight backpack, 50 crowns in my pocket. The door closing behind him slowly, which hurt the most. The following morning, at the auction, nobody raised their hand, except for him. They laughed. The municipal employee asked no questions. The hammer fell quickly, almost ashamedly. Nobody stopped Mikkel. Nobody warned us. Nobody cared. The walk to the property took hours. When the house appeared, it seemed less like a construction and more like an echo of an old mistake. Sunken walls, roof suffocated by its own structure, windows like empty sockets. He stopped in the doorway, the wind whipping his face. There was nowhere to go back to. He went in. There, the cold wasn't just about temperature. It was the cold of a place that had forgotten the sound of footsteps. The first night was a silent struggle. He slept curled up in a corner, among dry leaves and old cardboard. The cold bit like a beast. He didn't sleep. He resisted. The next day, he walked back to the city. He offered her a job. It was ignored, until an old man gave him boxes to stack in exchange for a loaf of bread and some coins. He repeated this for days, and when he had earned 3 more crowns, he went back to the tool shop. The owner, a quiet man named Einar, simply said, "You're the one from the house." Mikkel nodded. Einar pushed a piece of old canvas and some bent nails. "Scrap metal. You can take it." Mikkel extended his hand. "I worked to pay for it." Einar simply replied, "I know." In the following weeks, the shelter began to take shape. No rush. No pretension. Michael isolated a room with tarpaulin, reused old planks, and made tools from rusty iron and broken wood. I didn't know what I was doing. I learned from my mistakes. The cold weather arrived earlier that year, not like a storm, but like a siege. Each day gets harder, each night, longer. His fingers ached, his body stiffened, and even so, he would get up. The first serious mistake came when trying to lift a beam. The wood gave way. He fell. His shoulder slammed against the ground. The pain was dry, contained. He lay there for several minutes. Then he sat up. He stood up slowly, not to continue, but to not give up. The next day, he returned to Einar. The old man saw the motionless arm. "What is it now?" "I need something to secure the beam," Mikkel replied. Einar gave him a leather belt and a bent piece of iron. "That will help. I'll pay." "I know." The city remained silent. But now, he was watching. Mikkel started to get noticed. An apple in the bag. A bundle of firewood left unattended near the road. He didn't express his gratitude with words. But I saw it, and I kept it. Winter has finally arrived. The first snowstorm gave no warning. It came as an ambush. Mikkel was in the shallow woods collecting branches. He trusted his own interpretation of the heavens too much. When the horizontal snow started, he ran. He lost his way. The white man swallowed everything. The house disappeared. And for the first time, doubt penetrated deeper than the cold. But he found it. In time, almost frozen. The fire had gone out. The fingers no longer responded. He tried to relight it. It failed. Only then did she remember a piece of old fabric she had kept. Her mother's. He used it as bait. It worked out. The flames returned, shy, but firm. The following morning the house had held up. Bad, but resisted. And it was on that same day that he saw, through the window, a figure on the horizon. A couple. 2 children, lost in the snow. Mikkel turned on his flashlight and placed it in the window. He opened the door. He called. They came. And at that moment, without words, he understood. The house that was once called a mistake, now was someone's last chance. And sure, here's the second part of the story, fully adapted to the new Norwegian setting while faithfully maintaining the emotional structure and quiet narrative of the original script. The youngest child, perhaps 4 years old, was unconscious. The man carried him, his arms stiff with despair. The woman, wrapped in a torn coat, wept silently. The other boy, perhaps 8 years old, watched everything with wide eyes, holding back his terror with clenched teeth. Mikkel is angry. It rekindled the fire. He covered the floor with worn-out blankets. He offered her the last piece of bread he had saved. He did what he could. He did what he knew how to do. The hours dragged on in silence. Then, in the early morning, the youngest boy cried. A hoarse, almost broken sound. And that's when the woman broke down. Not in despair, but in relief. The father sat against the wall, exhausted, and simply said, "You saved him." Mikkel looked around. The house was shaking. The wind was not fresh, but there was warmth. There was life. "It wasn't me," he replied. "It was the house." They stayed there for 2 days. The storm lasted longer than anyone had predicted. They ate what little there was. They slept in shifts, and they shared more silence than words. Mikkel understood without needing to say it what he had built, a place where someone might not die. On the morning of the departure, the oldest boy, Olaf, stood at the door. "You live here? Alone?" Mikkel nodded. "And you're not afraid?" He thought of the early mornings when the fire almost went out, the day the snow swallowed him whole, on the beams, about to collapse. And he replied calmly, "I do, but I'm more afraid of returning to nothingness." Olaf remained silent. Then he waved, and it was gone. When the house was empty again, it felt different, as if he had understood his own purpose. In the following days, Mikkel noticed new details. The fire heated better when there were more people in the space. Silence now seemed to wait. And the wind, it didn't seem so strong anymore when he wasn't the only one facing it. But winter, he wouldn't give in. On the contrary, tough weeks followed. Short storms, heavy snow, cold that cut right down to the base. During the early morning hours, the house made a creaking noise, wood bending, nails creaking. On the 3rd sleepless night, a beam fell, less than a meter from where he was sleeping. Mikkel didn't scream. He stared at the hole in the roof, the snow visible up there. It was a warning. Either you rebuild me, or you bury me. The following morning, he began to dismantle the oldest part of the house. Slowly, with precision, destroy in order to rebuild. Not like in the movies. It was sweaty, risky. He almost fell twice. In one instance, his foot slipped and he was left hanging by his waist. It hurt, but there was resolve in their eyes. The house didn't want to be saved. It wanted to be rebuilt. That's when Einar appeared. He drove his pickup truck to the front of the house. He went down. I didn't say hi. He didn't praise it. He simply pointed with his chin. He cut through that wall. It was rotten inside. Mikkel replied. And the roof? I'll redo it. Alone? Mikkel hesitated. Then he nodded. Einar opened the back of the car. He took out a toolbox and a roll of tarpaulin. Leftovers, he said. I didn't ask for it. I didn't offer either. Mikkel caught it. That night, he covered the roof with the new tarp, and he fell asleep without hearing the house opening up from the inside. The routine has changed. Morning, firewood. Afternoon, structure. Night, a study of the sounds of the house by lamplight. He learned to recognize each crack, the good, the bad, the dangerous. Days later, Einar returned, this time with a woman, Anna Luca, and her 13-year-old son, Jonas. Her heater stopped working, he said. No one answered. Can I take a look? Mikkel simply nodded. He went down to the basement. He examined the system. In less than an hour, the engine was running again. Jonas watched quietly. You learned all of this? Here? Mikkel looked at his dirty hands, at his marked palms. I learned because I had to. Anna tried to pay. He refused. He accepted nails. And wood. On the way back, the sun was already setting. And there, on the way back, he realized, People were starting to trust, not out of pity, but because the house worked. Winter continued, but it was no longer invincible. Now the house had windows, some made of repurposed broken glass, others of acrylic. The roof held up. The wind passed by, but it did not dominate. Mikkel started leaving the flashlight on in the window, not out of fear, out of habit, by someone. A silent sign. Is there someone here? One Sunday morning, the sound of an engine interrupted the routine. Old, dragged. Mikkel peeked from the side. He recognized the car, and the voice. Michael! It was the uncle, the aunt in the seat next to me, eyes downcast. In the back seat, boxes, clothes, blankets, and a bucket with groceries. Mikkel didn't move. The uncle came downstairs. Slow steps, without arrogance. The city has talked a lot about you. Break. What you did here, nobody imagined. More silence. We were wrong. We thought it was the right thing to do. Mikkel did not respond. We brought some things, and the fence around the property is giving way. They stood face to face. No excuses, no hugs, just a necessity. I can look into that tomorrow, Mikkel said. The uncle nodded, and he left. The next day, Mikkel went. He fixed the fence. Silent, necessary. He brought his own tools. On the way back, he sat down on the wooden bench in front of the house. The wind was blowing, but he wasn't trembling. Someone who had turned their back on him was now returning, not as a hero, but like someone who needed it. The end of winter didn't bring flowers. It came with leaks, and with them, the confirmation. The house had resisted. The soil was softening. The birds were returning. And the city now said, Mikkel, new boards have arrived. Mikkel, if you want, there are screws to spare. Einar would show up without warning. He was bringing things. He left instructions. I was leaving. Other young people were coming, one of them, Olav, with a bag. My father said I can help sometimes. Do you know how to hammer? Not yet. You'll learn. The 50-crown house became a landmark. Nothing was official, but everyone knew. If something were broken, perhaps the boy of the house knew how to fix it. The light from the window remained lit, not out of necessity, but by promise. Until one day Einar showed up with papers. The council wants to register you as a local service provider. Mikkel looked. He saw his own name printed, clean handwriting, blank signature. But I'm still just a boy. It was, Einar replied. Mikkel signed. No rush. Without forced emotion, just firmness. Years later, they still called it the 50-crown house. But those who looked closely, those who sat on the wooden bench and felt the wind rustling against the sturdy planks, understood. It wasn't about the house. It was about having stayed. About rebuilding where everyone said it was pointless. About lighting a flashlight even when you didn't know if anyone would see it. And leave. A light is on. For those who are still lost in the white. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of something you almost left behind, or if a light came on inside, don't let that flame go out. Subscribe to the channel to receive stories like this. Real, human stories. Made for those who need silence more than noise. Leave a comment saying, I also have a $5 house. No need to explain. Those who understand will understand. And ring the bell. Because sometimes all we need is a little light turned on in the right place, at the right time.